Today I'm once again using Mortar bait. I really think it's a really great deck. It's what I got to Ultimate Champion with last season, and I highly recommend giving it a try if you're looking for a good deck. It does take a little bit to pick up, but I think that it's not as difficult as some other decks. Now, of course, they're probably playing some sort of log bait or possibly even Mortar bait deck, judging by the skeleton barrel. Seeing the Firecracker, they might be playing the same deck as me. It is a somewhat popular deck. Looks like it's not going to be the exact same, but my main tip for this deck is don't overextend. But much like with typical log bait, you want to try to apply pressure, get their small spell out of cycle, and then just be able to chip their tower down. If you can't get a connection with Mortar, you want to focus on your bait cards, and if you can't get a connection with your bait cards, you want to focus with your Mortar. Pretty simple stuff, but it's hard to do in practice. It's always easier to watch a more experienced player. I have like probably 500 hours on the game, but I know some people that have way fewer hours, and they are also really good at the game. So, just because you haven't played the game for a really long time, or just because you're not the best now, doesn't mean you can't improve, and doesn't mean that you won't be able to push to high arenas or ranks. Of course, the defensive Mortar is going to help get some chip damage while protecting our tower. Since we're at 10, I'm just going to play Goblin Gang, try to bait out a small spell. They played Witch, which is, an overcommitment in defense. Or not really overcommitment, but they're paying more to defend than I did, so it's a positive elixir trade for me. And of course, it does give a counter push, but Witch isn't really that good. So, they did get good damage on the tower, but just applying pressure, especially to both lanes if they're struggling to keep up, is really good. Mortar with the Knight behind it is really good, and then Firecracker to be able to chip onto the tower is great. Evo Mortar into the Mega Knight is not the worst thing in the world. But of course, everybody hates Mega Knight, right? But really, it's not that hard to defend if you know how to go about it. In this deck, the only problem with defending Mega Knight is typically if your Knight is out of cycle, or like the last card in your cycle, or if you're like behind on Elixir. So really just don't want to get behind on Elixir, and you want to make sure that you're keeping good cycle. Defensive Mortar is really important, or using an offensive Mortar while defending is great, especially as you saw earlier for like a Hog Rider. And you really just want to be able to, with Mortar, keep your attacks going while defending, because it's great. It can chip your opponent's tower while defending, which is, Mortar's main, its main advantage over other offensive, or even defensive cards. And in this deck, as I've been saying, as you can see, this dual lane pressure is just super important, because if, it's not always important, but against certain players, against certain matchups, it's going to keep them from being able to keep up and help you keep advantage, because some decks or some players really struggle at defending both lanes. A powerful push that I like is Skeleton Barrel in front of, a Knight, because once the barrel falls, the Knight will tank for the skeletons, which is really great. Since we're in overtime, I'm going to start cycling my Fireball. Because my Knight isn't in cycle, gotta cycle to it. Gotta pull the Hog Rider. Unfortunately, this is a pretty powerful push, but not one that I can't defend. The Evo Firecracker is going to get a lot of damage on tower, and right now I think it's best to just really focus on the one lane since we're in overtime, and they have so much elixir that they can access, in that, because we're in 3x, it's just much more valuable to focus the one lane. And once you're at this point, keeping a Mortar constantly down is super great, especially against Hog Rider, because it makes it a lot more difficult for them to get a connection. Because as you can see, the Mortar is constantly defending and trying to chip down their tower, and I think we just barely don't have enough damage to take the lead. Oh, but maybe. if the firecracker doesn't hit, just barely with the victory. Very close, very intense game. Hopefully you learned something out of that. On to the next one. Alright, I personally always like to start by cycling an evolution because this deck, you know, the 2 evolutions are relatively cheap. Since they did put Mega Knight first play, we're going to apply pressure on the other lane so that way they can't support this Mega Knight, because otherwise it could be a bit of a tough defense. Playing Minion Horde, very interesting. Not a good card by any stretch of the imagination, really. You know, with this pretty cheap defense, should be able to take out the Mega Knight even with the arrows that they used. I could push the other lane with the Goblin Gang because they did use arrows, but since it's so early, I want to be careful, not overcommit, and just throw the game. But as I was saying, you know, cycling a Mortar in the middle first play isn't always bad because it is a good defensive card. What a very interesting and cheesy deck. But yeah, that is going to get some damage on the tower. But yeah, my opponent's definitely playing like a mid-ladder cheese deck. Nothing that really takes any particular skill. It's just something to try to catch your opponent off guard, especially like a less skilled player. So a deck like this, you know, some of you might struggle against, but it's really mostly just about keeping a level head, not overcommitting your elixir, and just punishing them because, like, as you saw, they spent so much elixir on a push that gets deleted by Log and Firecracker. And, you know, if you're just able to properly defend, then there's not really anything they can do about your counter push. And like Mega Knight, Evo Mega Knight, yeah, it is a powerful card, and some people do struggle defending against it, but it's not actually that problematic if you are able to, because it is so expensive and it's really not that good. Like Evo Mega Knight is a pretty powerful card, but normal Mega Knight, most of the time, the only time it's really good is when your opponent has way more elixir than you and a huge advantage, and in those cases you would have lost anyway. You know, just waiting for those balloons to drop to Log. Since we have already cycled back to another Knight, and they've just committed so much elixir, we can just cycle another Skeleton Barrel, which is great because of their tower that they're using, the Cannoneer. Evo Wizard, you know, not the best card, but it is pretty solid. Can be annoying. Just gotta make sure we're just pulling their cards toward the middle. But yeah, super easy match. Did not mean to place that up there. I meant to put it in the middle, so that was a misclick by me. But yeah, good game. Very easy match. But you could definitely struggle against it if you're newer, so yeah. Hopefully you guys have learned something from this. I highly recommend trying out this deck. Very good, very fun. And I think, like, Mortar, it's been a very solid win condition for a long time. It's likely going to stay playable in the meta for, you know, the foreseeable future. And it's very solid. And, you know, it's always been good, and it always will be, so it's worth investing your, you know, your gold and your elite wild cards, or even, you know, your normal wild cards, because, you know, they don't really do much to the Mortar, and it's always going to stay solid. One thing I would like to say is you should drop a like and comment, because if this video gets to 1,000 likes, and if it's been helping you guys, I'm going to be giving away a Clash Royale to a random commenter. And if you want a chance to win, you know, you gotta like and comment. And I'd appreciate it if you subscribed. So if you found this helpful, drop a sub. Alright, we are, of course, playing against log bait, so we have to try to keep the log in cycle. But if, you know, when you're playing against log bait, if they're, like, putting so many cards that die to log next to each other, sometimes you do get more value getting those cards killed by the log. Because, yeah, they're going to be able to Goblin Barrel, but you can just, like, Goblin Gang that, and you'll only take damage from, like, 1 or 2 Goblin stabs. So it's really not that big of a deal if you're able to get more value out of the log on offense. Or even defense, you know, if they put like a Goblin Gang and a Dart Goblin and all these cards next to each other. Alright, now we're going to be moving to the right lane for our primary push because it is lower on tower health. The Evo Mortar, super powerful card. And we're just going to try to bait this Firecracker over. And just keep on applying pressure. Since they're struggling with the dual lane pressure, I'm just going to see, because they spent all their elixir on the right side, so now they're going to struggle defending on the left, and hopefully we'll get a Mortar connection. Alright, and the Mortar did lock, and it got a hit. They used their log, we're going to go in with the Skeleton Barrel and the Goblin Gang on the other side. And I could, since we're in overtime, I'm going to start using a defensive Mortar on occasion, just because against log bait, defensive Mortar is really solid. That might be a tricky barrel, but it was not. Sometimes it's a little hard to tell. Alright, and we got both our evolutions in cycle, and they use their Tesla on the right, which is their main defense for the Mortar, which means that I can just for free put my Mortar on the other side without having to worry too much about their defense. And this is the time, like I was saying, when log is worth it on offense, because it's going to protect my Mortar and I'm going to get so much damage off of it that it's worth the log. Like, I got probably like 1,000 damage off that or something. I wasn't quite paying attention enough, but... And then as you can see, that Mortar will kill the Dart Goblin, getting 3 damage off the... to the Goblin Barrel from the pre-placed Firecracker. And since he already used his defensive Tesla, now he can't use it against the Mortar. Alright, he was able to cycle back, but because it's such a tight game, I'm just going to start Fireball cycling. Fireball's super nice in this deck for that reason. And we can just start defensive Mortaring since we don't even need it on offense anymore. And times like that are when the King Tower activation are super nice, so if you don't know how to activate King Tower off of like a Firecracker, you should definitely learn. It's really easy, and it can really make or break games, especially against log bait. And that's a good game. Alright, as I said, leave a like, leave a comment, and if this helped you, drop a sub, and if you have any questions, let me know in the comments, but have a good day.